Elon Musk has now shared that he is planning to launch a third party. Let's go back to where this came from and how this started. On July 4th, Elon Musk posted a poll, non-scientific, but figures lie and liars figure. So I think my overall confidence in polls, and probably y'all share this with me, is at an all-time low. He shared a poll, and this poll asked of 1.2 million people who voted in it, do you want independence from the two-party system? And 65% said yes. Elon Musk really went to bat for President Trump during the campaign, right? And during the lead up. And I think that the youth vote, like the kids, those young whippersnappers under 30, the youth vote is really an underestimated aspect of this. Because en masse, people did, of course, vote for President Trump. But what really got the young people out to vote for him was not necessarily MAGA. It was people who were dynamic and involved and advocating for things that they resonated with, i.e. not being taxed for wars that they weren't even alive to consent to. And so with Elon going around and stumping for President Trump, and I think he donated, it was a lot of money that Elon donated to the campaign and also support levels for the campaign. When Elon took this hiatus from his other creative and work endeavors to go and work for Doge, that was not an insignificant development. I mean, I don't know if y'all remember, but Tesla dealerships were being vandalized. These cars were being set on fire. It was a lot that was going on. And so he took a lot of flack for the Department of Government Efficiency's moves and what they did and the cost cuts that they were going towards and the fraud that they uncovered and just this massive amount of pork that they found, A, was just floating there, and B, being effectively money laundered by people who rub elbows with the powerful, the elites, and all their little Ivy League. There's a not nice word for it. I'm going to avoid that. All their little Ivy League minions. There we go. That's the nice word for it. So Musk really took a step back from his endeavors in order to be involved in this. And then with the passage of the big, beautiful bill, a lot of people who were on the Trump train because of Musk's involvement, because of Musk's advocacy, they're also feeling similarly like, hey, didn't you say that we were going to restore fiscal conservancy? Didn't you say that we were going to be financially responsible again? And with the big, beautiful bill, a lot of people felt betrayed, including Elon Musk, because when you look at what he did, he effectively might as well not have worked. He might as well not have taken that hiatus from his other business interests and endeavors. His stock, Tesla stock, took a pretty significant beating as a result of the man, Elon Musk's involvement in Doge. So you can understand, of course, that he would be somewhat miffed when all of his efforts are nullified with the passage of this bill. So he's obviously motivated for that, I would say, out for blood. But there's also, for instance, a principle. Now, I will say this. I do not know him, and I try to judge people favorably if I can. And so I'm not sure what his deeper motives are. Maybe you guys have some insight on this. I would love to know. But I think it's fair to say that the youth vote is not going away, because as much as we love our baby boomers, may they live to 120, the baby boomers are, for the most part, the most politically active. But as an aggregate and as an overall cohort, a voting cohort, we are losing them every year. So the Doge efforts were really a reflection of this desire for quasi-populist, somewhat fiscal conservancy, and really people just tired of war and tired for being taxed on things they're never going to recoup and taxed on things they really don't see the benefit of. Elon represents a huge portion of the younger quasi-conservative populist vote. The United States is facing its 250th anniversary, so to speak, right about the time of the midterms in 2026. 250 years. Does that number seem significant to anybody? 250 years, roughly, depending on who you attribute this thought to. The Tytler cycle is foremost of the attributions. 250 years tends to be roughly the shelf life of a republic. Now, you have different poster children for this, but the United States has gone through a lot of upheaval since its birth, a lot of turmoil, a lot of shifting in the way that we live our lives based on the balance of power and based on the way that the Constitution is applied. How does all of this play into the Musk and the move for the third party? So Jefferson was very wary of the two-party system. This is a key point. Jefferson told Washington that he was quite fearful of a two-party system because of the way that it would crush free thought and because of the way that it would lead to despotism. Okay? Jefferson, nonetheless, worked in this system and advocated for activity in a party that he found that was effectively part of this two-party system. But overall, he was more allegiant to the principle of a republic, a constitutional republic, and the values of that republic. This is one of the reasons why he was effectively the father of the Anti-Federalists. The Anti-Federalists are the reason why we have the Bill of Rights, by the way, not the Federalists. And so when you consider that Jefferson's principles were what guided ultimately his view on how the voting process should happen, Jefferson, in my opinion, would probably be for a third party to break the stranglehold of the two-party system, which some people argue is a uniparty. And then, the question becomes, okay, well, let's say, for instance, that Elon founds this American party. Would that not then be effectively a repeat of the Clinton-Bush-Ross Perot election? I remember that one. Do y'all remember that one? And so many people were making the claim that Perot handed that election to Clinton because Clinton did not get a majority of the vote, got a plurality. Jefferson, I believe, would make the case that rather than short-term tactics for an election victory, the long-term stability of a republic depends upon the vibrance of that thought and the ability of free citizenry to have representation without being herded into the cattle gates of the two-party system. Whether or not this is going to materialize, I don't know. If it does materialize, if Elon Musk's move towards founding this party does materialize, I think it could be potentially quite catastrophic for Republicans, for sure, during the midterms. And if it would be the case, I think it would pull significantly from the libertarian side. It would also pull significantly from the Republican side of things. And a particular poll, this is a July 2025 poll that I have here, 40% of Americans were open to voting for the American Party. 57% of Republican men were interested in this. 57% of Republican men. You can't really blame them because when you consider that if you're a self-respecting man who has his Y chromosomes and a decent amount of testosterone flowing through his veins, then no self-respecting man is going to vote for a party that vilifies masculinity, which would be the Democrat Party. The Republican Party now stands for a hodgepodge of things. I think if we have seen anything over the past 6 weeks in the United States with the lead up to the Big Beautiful Bill, and then also the potential for intervention into the Middle East again, a lot of people feel very wary of foreign entanglements, rightly so, but there is this identity crisis that's happening on the right. And the question is, what are people going to do moving forward? What does the next generation want in the Republican Party? And will the Republican Party listen to them and adjust fire? I'm not sure that they will. And why do I think that? Because most of the leadership for the Republican Party is very much entrenched in this mindset that has been nurtured, and this narrative of the world and their worldview that has been nurtured on the presupposition that the United States will be prosperous in perpetuity. For the most part, the baby boomers, by virtue of their name and being in leadership, their world experience has been formed in a post-World War II era where you have economic prosperity en masse, not necessarily in the individual, because there are a lot of people that I know personally are boomers, but grew up in poverty because of the way that the chips fell here in Appalachia. But the change that needs to happen in order for the leadership to address the concerns of the next generation, I don't see it being particularly flexible and particularly adaptable enough, because it really challenges their presuppositions, particularly when it comes to technology, artificial intelligence, the way that the economy is going to be morphing with this new technology. I can not even wrap my head around it fully. And I see in my own experience, perhaps you know people who are the exception to this, but I see in my own experience that a lot of people who are at a certain age point, there tends to be it's just the nature of things. People tend to be dedicated to what they know and have grown up with. Musk represents a fundamental destabilizing influence and a shaking and a rattling. And because of this, I think that it could very well end up making some big changes in the way that we view things, thanks to the midterm elections. And I do see, and I said this just briefly, but I'll say it again, I do see that this particular midterm that we would be facing in 2026 is particularly consequential, not just from the current dynamic, but because of the benchmark and the landmark that it represents as the 250th year since our founding. And I don't see that we are fundamentally stronger and healthier and more vibrant as a republic with better safeguarding of our rights, our life, our liberty, and our property. Perhaps the third party can do that. I'm not so sure. Leave me a comment below and let me know what you guys think.